probably give you the reference for the case. It is reported in 31 BLD, page 201. There we discussed the laws which actually prohibit corporal punishment in education institutions. And just to finish the story, the Education Secretary within a week issued circulars saying that no corporal punishment in any education institution in Bangladesh. It hasn't stopped, but certainly it has reduced. I will not go into detail about the long-term effects of corporal punishment, but I leave it to your imagination. What happens if somebody is beaten? It is a scar left, maybe not on the body, but certainly in their psyche, in their minds, for the rest of their lives. Now let's then talk about, when we are talking about children, just think of the number of children who have been sexually harassed and assaulted. It has become so pervasive. Every day, you open a newspaper, you'll find children, women too, have been sexually assaulted, raped, killed. Why is it happening? Perhaps moral degradation. But I go back to what I said. The first and foremost reason in my mind is the fact that we are mature, we are more powerful, we are stronger. As a result, we have these evil people who rape children, 2, 3-year-old children, 4, 5-year-old children. It's crazy, but it happens. It is happening in our society, in our country. Because of sexual harassment, girls are dropping out of school. And what happens when girls drop out of school? They don't get the education. What happens if they don't get education? We go back into that cycle of poverty, as I described at the very beginning. No education, no empowerment. Empowerment is a must for any society. Empowerment of women is a must for every society. We are still so far backward because we do not care to have our girls being educated. I see plenty of girls here. I'm very happy to see that. But this is only a small minority group here. You go to the villages, rural areas. মেয়েদের লেখাপড়া দরকার কি? রান্না বাড়া করতে পারলেই তো। কদিন পরে বিয়ে হয়ে যাবে, চলে যাবে, খামখা সময় নষ্ট করবে স্কুলে গিয়ে। Yes? Is that the attitude? That is the pervasive attitude in our society. It is wrong. 50%, maybe 51% of our population is female. If we cannot get this 51% empowered through education, we have half of our country being disabled. We have lost half of our potential in economic terms. What does it take? It simply takes a little bit of sense, common sense, to get our girls educated. Now, going back to sexual harassment, girls drop out of school because of the sexual harassment on the way to and from school. And it's happening. But then there are ways out. We should think of different ways to control, or at least to minimize, the harassment. Small story. I was in, now what is that place across the river from Rajshahi? The other side, India. No. Murshidabad. Sorry. I was in Murshidabad. On a cold December morning, I was going out for a walk, but I couldn't see my hand in front of me because of the fog. So I waited. As soon as the fog lifted, a colleague of mine was with me. We saw hordes, dozens of girls suddenly appearing on their bicycles, all in different garbs. Some wearing hijab even, some wearing shirts and pants. They were all cycling to school, college, etc. So I immediately thought, well, that's a great idea. This is some time back, I must add this, maybe 8-10 years ago. So I thought, well, why can't we do that? That will stop the sexual harassment of the girls from to and from school. Because number one, they will be traveling in groups. Number two, they will be faster on wheels. So I came back and I happened to meet the Minister for Education. And I suggested this to him. He said, no, this won't happen. Our society is too conservative. They will not allow girls to ride bicycles. Do girls ride bicycles? I think a few months after that, maybe a year or so after that, we suddenly saw in the paper, girls were being provided with bicycles in Lalmonirhat, then Kumilla, then rest of the country. So, that needs a bit of thinking, bit of thinking ahead, forward thinking. Children were arrested and put into jail. Now, children are not supposed to be put into jail. Because what happens when we put children in jail? Well, number one, it's illegal. But number two is that they have to mingle with other bad people. Not good people are put in, no good people is put in the jail. Only criminals, or at least alleged criminals, are put in jail. So we found that there was a newspaper heading again, 145 children in jail. So we issued a rule, that can't be, it's illegal. And then we found so many children being put into jail by request of the parents. Because the parents are saying to the judge, if you put them into the development center, we have only 3 in the country, 1 in Tongi for boys, 1 in Punabari for girls, the only one in the country, and 1 in Joshua for boys. So every child who is put in a detention center or development center is put into one of the 3 places, no matter whether they come from Cox's Bazar, Titulia or Techno. So why do the judges put them into jail? Because the parents request them to be put into the local jail so that they can visit them. But we have to abide by the law. We issued the rule saying, no, you cannot do that. But to alleviate that problem, what we did, this is aside from the law, is something that I learned from Bangkok. Again, many years ago, I was in Bangkok and they took us to a children's detention center. And at that time, internet was poor, almost non-existent here, and poor in Bangkok. They were trying to show me how they connect the children in the detention center with their parents. They didn't do very well because of the poor connection, but the idea was there. So when I came back, I thought, well, this is a good idea. We can do that with the children that we have in the detention centers. Because you have to remember that children, when they are caught, they are in any event vulnerable, and when they are caught in some alleged criminal offense, they become even more vulnerable. And when they have to suddenly leave their family, friends and siblings, they feel totally lost, disheartened, desolate. So I approached UNDP, Save the Children, GIZ, UNICEF. They all agreed that it's a good idea, but nobody paid the money. So in the end, I asked one of our computer operators in our Supreme Court, and I said, how much is it going to cost? And the cost was surprisingly very low. So I paid it from my own pocket. We established connection between the centers and the rest of the country where the parents come. And of course, Digital Bangladesh, we are very grateful to the authorities for creating this phenomenon for us. It is obvious, it is now prevalent throughout the whole of the country. The first person that we saw when we inaugurated this scheme, a boy in Tongi who was alleged to have murdered someone, so he was accused in a murder case. I think he was about 15. He saw his parents for the first time, virtually, after a year or two. And he was crying at this end, and his parents were crying at the other end. He was a Hindu boy, so very poor Hindu family, in Sunamganj, in a village under Sunamganj district. Now you can imagine, the village to Sunamganj, Sunamganj to Sylhet, Sylhet to Dhaka, and Dhaka to Tongi. For a poor family, that is impossible. So we managed to link them up. And then luckily, I suddenly met the Minister for Telecommunication at the airport, and I said, look, we've got this system for 3 of the centers. We have 6 centers for girls in safe homes. Could you do that for us? And he said, yes, I'll do it. And he has done it. So all the centers are now connected to the internet, and they can all speak to their parents. Now the reason we do this, again, children are most in need of their protection, especially when they are caught, especially when they are away suddenly from home. Children are children. Remember, they can be from the age of 9 up to the age of 18. So this is the time when they most need the support from the family. Now let's talk about children who work. Are children supposed to work? How many of you have worked in your life? Any of you? Done physical work in the field or in the house, or sorry, not in the house, in the field or in the factory or in some manufacturing? Anyone? Only one. There are thousands of children working in our factories, in our homes. And I actually had the opportunity of seeing some of the children working in old Dhaka, making batteries. One child was actually dealing with some chemicals which they use for making batteries, and he was connecting. Professor Reza would be able to tell us. I could see sparks, electric sparks. The child was about 12 years old, and he was handling this with his bare hands. He was handling chemicals with his bare hands. And why was he doing this? For a few takas. Why was he engaged? Because the person who is engaging him is getting cheap labor. Labor which is cheap, as well as a person who will not speak. He cannot protest. And there are hundreds of thousands of our children working. Children who work in the houses. How many of you have children working in your household? Come on, be honest. Not many. Surprise? But almost every other household in Dhaka, you will find, has a child. Helping hand, we want to give it a polite name. Maid servant, if you want to call them that. But they are there. And how are they treated? Badly. Where do they sleep? Either on the kitchen floor or under the dining table. When do they wake up in the morning? Before Madam wakes up, of course. And when do they go to bed? After Madam goes to bed. We are talking about children aged 8, 9, 10, 12. These children should be in school. They should be studying to make a better life for themselves. But we are not allowing that. So, in a judgment again, we said, not allowed. Children under the age of 14, by law, cannot work in the factories. This is the Labour Act. Children between the age of 12 and 14 can only work if their health is not hampered, if their education is not hampered. But who cares? Does anybody care? You go out into the factories and see how many children are working. We were dealing with the case of the bidi workers up in the north. Thousands of children were working in the bidi factories, not even documented. So we said, ban children from bidi factories, rightly or wrongly. Because then what happened, yes, they stopped engaging children in the bidi factories, but then they started sending the tobacco and the equipment to the homes. So there, not only the children were working, but the babies were being affected by the tobacco dust. We didn't foresee that. Should be banned totally. We ordered that. I believe it's still happening. Do children consent to work? This is forced labor. Forced labor is prohibited by our constitution. Children only work because parents say, if you don't work, no dinner. Or the parents are sick, the child feels obliged. In any event, it is not by consent. So we suggested that children below the age of 12 should not be engaged in any work. And if they must be engaged in domestic work, then there should be ways of educating them at the same time. Another small story. Having delivered this judgment, the then Honorable Chief Justice summoned me to his chamber. He said, "What are you doing? What have you done? All these children will starve." I quite, thinking back, I was brave enough to say, well, people who think they are helping these children by feeding them and clothing them are not doing them any favors, because they are making them handicapped for the rest of their lives. Just imagine this scenario. 8-year-old girl from a poor family is engaged by a goodly gentleman in an urban area. Yes, he provides food and clothes. Now if he is a good gentleman, when she turns 11 or 12, he'll say to his wife, "This girl is grown up now, we better send her back. She's going to be trouble." Now, you know what I mean? She'll be trouble because she'll be accosted by next door neighbor's son, the driver, the cook. Soon she might even be raped. So the good gentleman says,